The biggest gift my ancestors gave me was my last name. That is King. This is the amulet that moves through my whole story. It's a name that comforts me and gives me strength. I asked my dad not that long ago where that name came from. Well, actually, the name of the family tree of my father's side is Ivelaar. And this is a slave name my ancestor didn't want to be associated with. So when he became a free man, he decided to buy the name King. And that means a lot to me. And this is the story that my father told me, but I'm not sure if it's 100% true, but it sounds pretty epic, don't you think? So my first name is Naomi, and this is a biblical name. In Hebrew, the name means the pleasant one, the bringer of love. The story of Naomi tells about a courageous woman who became a widow at a very young age, had to raise her 2 sons by her own, but had to suffer because of the death of both of them. But she still opened her arms for her daughter-in-law Ruth and decided to raise her on her own. So, in addition, I decided to become an artist in this life. And my dad said, that's a gift. And you shouldn't keep a gift for yourself, so that became my mission. So in this life, I chose to be a loving, creative king who takes care of its people. But I always asked myself, can I, as an artist, leave something behind and help people create and find their spark for their own story? And the answer to that question is, I have to, since the inside joke my father always makes is that I ate colored pencils before I ate chicken. So, I have a very lovely and very funny dad who always makes these kinds of jokes. And he migrated at a very young age from Suriname to the Netherlands as the oldest of 16 kids. Met my mom, who was 7 years older and already had 4 children, and they fell in love. So my dad adopted these 4 kids at the age of 26 and decided to raise them as his own. He worked very hard in a factory, he studied, he became a mathematical teacher, and raised 6 kids because me and my brothers showed up later. When I was a teenager, I was struggling a lot because I couldn't find a role or place. I didn't know where I meant to be because I wasn't white, I wasn't black, I was a mixed child. And because of that, I didn't have that many role models. Because I was struggling a lot, I really couldn't find my identity. So I got a new stepdad. This one I liked. And we went to the weekends to his place. And we went there with my mother and my little brother. And one weekend, he asked me if I could follow him upstairs because he wanted to show me something. So as I followed him upstairs, I noticed a door I've never seen before. Okay, I have a quick question for you guys. Do you know this movie? It's called Beauty and the Beast. In Dutch, the name of Beauty is Belle, so if I'm switching up, sorry for that one. The story is about Beauty and the Beast, and you know what Beauty really liked to do? What? Sorry? Read what? Read stories, right, thank you so much. So, while being locked up in this dark, spooky castle that felt like a dungeon, the beast wanted to show her something too. So, as I went upstairs with my stepdad, and he opened the door of the room, my jaw dropped. It was a massive comic library, and there were comics everywhere that raised from the bottom to the ceiling. And as my stepfather grabbed one comic, he said to me, "This one you will like." And he pressed it into my hands. And I will never, ever forget this moment because it became the spark of my story. Oh, I felt like Belle all over again, sorry. But I felt like Belle all over again, and it became the spark of my own story because the comic he pressed into my hands is the American comic called ElfQuest. And this is a comic about a white elfish warrior tribe who thought they were the only tribe in the world. And they were being banned out of their ancestors' land, had to flee from a massive fire, and were forced to flee into the desert, into no man's land. And after walking for days while almost dying, they found another tribe. And they were black of skin. They combined their strength and started to find other tribes to help them out. And at that time, I will start drawing a lot. But I would only draw when I was alone. So I would withdraw myself to my room, create a nice environment, and start drawing my own world, my safe space, my own story. So at the Art Academy, I didn't believe in myself. I was too afraid to do so. And in 2013, while graduating with a major burnout, I had this conversation with the social media manager. I asked her to coach me because I couldn't find a job. And I can still remember and hear myself say to her, should I stop drawing? Should I find something else and change my whole life? And she looked me into the eyes and she asked me this one question. What are you missing? And I totally get it now. The only ingredient I was missing in my work and my life was myself, my own story. And at that time, my last name and my first name became the power I needed to go with my story. So, in 2018, I did it. I got out of this burnout. And I found my story, but I didn't know it back then. Because I had a date with this very lovely guy. I liked him a lot. And he was a graffiti writer, and he knew my work already for years. So at one date, he looked me into the eyes, and he asked me, or he said to me, show me how tough you are, you big mouth. And he pressed the spray can into my hands. And because I really liked this guy, I needed to toughen up. But it became the spark of the new chapter of my story. And I wanted to know everything about it. But that didn't really happen that quickly because of COVID. Do you still remember? But I didn't care because I asked for help. And I got help. People offered me walls to practice on for free. And I was paid in experience. So I practiced a lot and a lot. And in 2020, I was offered my first big wall in a music venue called Caps Lock. It was my first big wall, and it took my first interns, and it took me almost a month to finish it up because I really didn't know what to do, because it was my first big wall, of course. But it was the first time I realized where I belonged with my work, and this was in muralism and street art. So I wanted to know everything about this, and I started practicing more, mostly outside at legal walls, and I felt like Belle all over again. But half a year later, I was invited by a Rotterdam street art organization if I wanted to participate in this big international street art festival. And I said yes. And in 6 months, I was already a headliner at this big international street art festival. This was the first time I got to experience what it means to create art in public space. And this was the right place for me to inspire people more. I had to paint this tunnel, and every day there were little kids that had to pass through to reach kindergarten. So I wanted to create a magical safe place for them. And I decided to do this in the theme of Alice in Wonderland, since I was following my own white rabbit as well. And after that, I really felt it. This was my jam, so I started with painting. And with painting, and with painting, And I painted until last year. I was invited by Vestia to paint my first biggest wall ever in the Lampreijbuurt in Rotterdam. That's marked red on the map of the worst area to live in. And everyone was welcome to help out, but also everyone was thankful, and even the mayor decided to show up to thank me for this. And afterwards, I was exhausted. I really needed a break. So I went to Costa Rica to visit my friend. Well, the first plan was just to chill out, read a book, learn to surf, stuff like that. Well, that really didn't happen, of course, because I immediately fell in love with the warmth of the people. The community took me in, and I made new friends. And as my father told me, I have a gift and I have to give it away. So I asked the neighborhood and the community if I can help them out, create something beautiful to inspire the kids. And I found a less fortunate school. I asked the principal if I was allowed to paint the wall. And in the end, 18 people I never seen before. Locals, indigenous people, children, cats and dogs, everyone gathered to help out to paint this wall for the community as a gift. And this became the spark of my sole purpose. It's called the Artist Way Initiative. I want to inspire the youth and combine them with professionals to create wall paintings and murals all over the world as a gift. And the first country I had in mind was Cape Verde, because it has the biggest connection with Rotterdam, since they helped out with rebuilding the city after the Second World War. But I found out that applying for funding is a really rocky road. So I started with a crowdfunding, and I asked for help. More than 200 art pieces were donated to raise money for this project, and I did it. In 10 weeks, I gathered 10,000 euros for this project. And we went to West Africa. So I invited 6 colleagues and 2 apprentices. I flew in 5 other Cape Verdean artists from the other islands to help out create this 80-meter wall in the main capital called Praia for the school. And everyone was invited to help out. Kids were super happy, and even the mayor came over to thank me for this. So 4 weeks ago, I got this question: if I can make a community project in Lelystad, in the Waterwijk. And this is the area that marked red on the map for the worst area to live in. And I said, well, I can at least try, right? So as I started with the project, I really didn't know what to expect. But after only 2 days, there were little kids that came over and wanted to help out. So as we started first with this big coloring book, everyone was everyone was welcome. And then even the bigger kids came, and there were friendships being made. Everyone had their own role. And we worked day and night because of the Dutch weather for 12 days straight to finish this project. And while all the colors were slowly being transformed at the wall, people could come over to write down their names and their wishes for the neighborhood and create a safe space for them as well, a place they can be proud of. So, with a generous name, I can do nothing than to bring love and light all over the world. And my first name is, of course, Naomi, and my last name is King. And this is my story, but what is yours?